fashion today.
Well, in addition to fashion, we're talking about expensive renovations to homes, Andrea, and watches, and a jacket made of ostrich. But I've just been told that the prosecutors have just said in the courtroom that Rick Gates may or may not testify. They're not saying that he definitely will testify, which is interesting because the defense has portrayed him as the star witness. Of course, he's never been the star witness. Actually, Manafort and Gates were indicted together, and prosecution was prepared to make this case well before Rick Gates decided to cooperate. But now that he has cooperated, as Dan was saying earlier, it was thought that he would be able to lead the jury through some of these facts and give his perspective on what he saw Manafort doing with the finances. But now the prosecution is saying that may or may not happen, Andrea.
Well, who knows whether it is just holding it out and a surprise later, or whether he's a more important witness for the second trial. To be continued. Ken Delaney, and thank you so much, Daniel Goleman, and of course, Peter Alexander at the White House.
Thank you.
And coming up next, supermarket sweep. President Trump's gaffe about buying groceries doesn't exactly check out. That's ahead, right here on Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
Gas, bloating, constipation, and diarrhea can start in the colon and may be signs of an imbalance of good bacteria. Only Philips Colon Health has this unique combination of probiotics. It helps replenish good bacteria. Get 4-in-1 symptom defense.
Hey, Todd. Hey, well, so I think I got to get my roof repaired. Do you know anybody?
Yeah, actually I might.
Ah, great. Get me some additional quotes. Research the average price for the job in this area and book the job for 2 weeks from now. On a Wednesday. No, wait. Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday's better.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything Home Advisor can. So to find and instantly book a top-rated home pro for free, just ask Home Advisor.
Home Advisor. Summer is coming, and it's time to get outside. Pack in even more adventure with Audible. With the largest selection of audiobooks, Audible lets you follow plot twists off the beaten track. Or discover magic when you hit the open road. With the free Audible app, your stories go wherever you do. And for just $14.95 a month, you get a credit, good for any audiobook. If you don't like it, exchange it anytime. No questions asked. You can also roll your credits to the next month if you don't use them. So take Audible with you this summer. On the road, on the trail, or to the beach.
Location compromised.
Start a 30-day trial and your first audiobook is free. Cancel any time and your books are yours to keep forever. No matter where you go this summer, make it better with Audible. Text SUMMER17 to 500-500 to start listening today.
You might take something for your heart or joints, but do you take something for your brain? With an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish, Prevagen has been shown in clinical trials to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Buying a used car this way.
No, stop it. At North Hollywood Toyota, all of our used vehicles go through a 160-point inspection, so you get a reliable vehicle at the perfect price. Our used car selection is unmatched. We've got over 200 used vehicles in stock. Check out our full inventory online. Then you got up on the horse and was like, yeah, there's good savings for you. Oh, yeah. Shop with us today at NorthHollywoodToyota.com.
You know why God didn't say to before lawyers? He needed practice. Gainful employment, and in 10 months, poof, I'm a lawyer again.
Why don't you stop running the game on me and just tell me about the job?
Step into my office.
Fair? Let's talk about fair.
I decide. Deserves. Wish me luck.
A very busy news day.
Today's high-stakes confrontation.
Let's go live to the border where our colleague...
Exclusive video.
The
country's top intelligence officials.
NBC News gets an exclusive look inside.
Live here at the nation's capital.
There's now an open investigation.
Blockbuster new reporting today on this.
This is the deadliest school shooting. Supreme Court upheld the revised version.
Well, this new report comes amid a staggering amount of news.
Breaking news tonight exclusively here on
NBC News was first out with this scoop
It's been
today.
an extraordinary night watching this develop. So, a lot to talk about.
Op 4 is no longer in possession of the hostage. All friendly mission failure.
Only American citizens should vote in American elections. Which is why the time has come for voter ID like everything else. Voter ID. You know, if you go out and you want to buy groceries, you need a picture on a card. You need ID.
I don't know where he shops. Is his pitch for a nationwide voter ID requirement a controversial tactic that voting rights advocates say is intended to suppress turnout among minorities? The president's claim that people need IDs to buy groceries sparked criticism from some who wondered how out of touch the billionaire president just might be. Joining me now is Ruth Marcus, Washington Post deputy editorial page editor, columnist, and an MSNBC contributor, and Bill Kristol, editor-at-large for the Weekly Standard. Ruth, first to you. We go from Bijan suits at $25,000 a shot to voter IDs. I mean, this has been quite an interesting example of the testimony in Alexandria and now
they're in the basement downstairs with these.
And the Trump speech.
Yes, I don't know where President Trump shops, but I kind of suspect that he doesn't. And you and I, and by the way, congratulations on the 40-year anniversary. That's incredible. It was less than 40 years ago, but it was still a long time ago that President George H.W. Bush got in a heap of trouble for allegedly and perhaps unfairly not understanding a supermarket scanner and how that worked. This is basic. Go to the bodega around the corner. Go to your local supermarket. You don't need ID, and but more fundamentally, insisting on voter IDs is just there is no evidence of massive or even significant voting by non-citizens in U.S. elections. So he should really just stop.
Remember the Election Commission, Bill and Ruth, that they created,
yes.
And it fell flat. They never even could get a meeting together because there was just simply no evidence of the massive fraud that he's consistently alleges.
Yeah, I mean, we run elections in a federal system. States run elections. In Virginia, we do have I did show my driver's license when I voted. Others think that's too strict, and it's been debated in the Virginia legislature. But I'm old enough to remember when Republicans and conservatives tended to think these things should be left to the states. Sometimes the federal government has a role to play, assisting in security in elections, for example. But the idea that Trump is just demagoguing this, honestly, and it strikes me the tweets this morning, which you were discussing earlier, those are pretty serious. I mean, he seems to be intensifying the attack on Mueller. One thing that occurs to me is the Senate Judiciary Committee did report out 14-7, not 11-10, 14-7, a bill that would go some ways, at least, towards protecting Mueller. The Senate's in session. It wouldn't be a bad thing for Mitch McConnell to bring that to the floor. Maybe Chuck Schumer should try to insist that McConnell bring it to the floor, because it's important for Republicans, but really for the Congress, I think, to not let Trump talk himself into thinking that he can get away with really crippling this investigation. I think he'd pay a pretty big price if he tried, but on the other hand, he seems emboldened, and it really would be bad to have that constitutional crisis.
And it would certainly be bad for the Republicans. I mean, there's no question that this would become a midterm issue. He also was going after the media, which is a favorite target. He certainly did it during the campaign, and we saw during the campaign, Ruth, that the Washington Post and some other organizations were barred from those rallies, and they had to come in with the public and try to cover them as best they could. But let's listen to a bit of Donald Trump last night in Tampa, Florida, blasting the media.
Fake news, fake news. They are fake. Every night it's the same thing. Wouldn't you think they get tired of these speeches? Wouldn't you think?
And Jim Acosta has been a frequent target. He is the White House correspondent, of course, for CNN. CNN and NBC and others have also been targets. But Jim Acosta posted a video. We cleaned this up a little bit because we had to take out, bleep out all the profanity of Trump supporters at that rally, egged on by the president, going after Jim Acosta. the view from one correspondent, one network correspondent, Ruth, of what it's like to cover a Trump rally last night?
So it was bad enough, and honestly, it was scary enough at times when President Trump was just candidate Trump. But for a president of the United States to be repeatedly not just elevating this fake news argument, but to be talking about reporters as the enemy of the people, to be egging this on, to be egging it on in particular in the aftermath of the murders in Bliss, it's somewhere between appalling and heartbreaking, and we are becoming too much inured to it. And meanwhile, we're becoming inured to the absence of presidential news conferences. He's had one real news conference as president. I think there were 3 briefings by the White House press secretary last month. This is not normal. It's not okay. And it is of a piece with this sort of more public and virulent and scary attack on the media as well.
And let's just say, Bill Kristol, that all the presidents I covered, many of them, all of them did not like the media. They certainly didn't like us when we were questioning them and going after, issues, Iran-Contra. There were other scandals, Lewinsky. That said, they all understood that there should be press conferences, there should be interactions, and that was part of the process. And that's what you buy into when you become president of the United States. And it's what we advertise when we're preaching democracy to other countries, to totalitarian regimes. And to see this encouraged, it is dangerous because it undermines our basic values.
Yeah, I thought your phrase, egging it on, is really the key for me. I mean, there are always some thuggish supporters, sure, and there could be someone who says something terrible in a crowd and so forth. But the president, we've had presidents grumble about the media, occasionally try to rebuke the media or say you're wrong about this, or even once, let out a kind of a scream of exasperation publicly, but not this consistent egging on of mobs, which is really what that crowd becomes when it's egged on that way by the president, to shout obscenities and profanities and try to intimidate basically the media. And what does this look like? I mean, what if you're living abroad? What if America's a place you sort of wanted the kind of government you'd like to have, where there's the rule of law, free media, and then you see it turning into the kind of place that often immigrants have tried to escape to get to the United States from. It's very, very bad in so many ways.
And Bill Kristol and Ruth Marcus, we're going to talk about the real fake news, which is a national security issue because it's Russia. It's Russia using social media to spread dissent and spread propaganda under false flags. That's coming up next. So perhaps the president and his team should be looking more closely at a real threat to our national security. Ruth Marcus and Bill Kristol, thank you both so much. And coming up, social media, the social media strike. The Senate hears heightened warnings about Russia's attempt to influence this year's election. That hearing today. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
Morning Show speaks truth to power. He is destroying the Republican Party for years to come with access to the people who matter. From the halls of Congress to the Oval Office. Morning Show, weekdays 6 to 9 on MSNBC.
I'm a fighter. Always have been. When I found out I had age-related macular degeneration, AMD, I wanted to fight back. My doctor and I came up with a plan. It includes PreserVision.
Only PreserVision AREDS 2 has the exact nutrient formula recommended by the National Eye Institute to help reduce the risk of progression of moderate to advanced AMD.
That's why I fight. Because it's my vision, PreserVision.
Also in a great-tasting chewable.
What's the horse?
What you don't see can hurt you. Today's connected world is full of threats you may not see if you just monitor your credit to help protect your identity. LifeLock sees more, like your personal information on the dark web. And now with the power of Norton, we detect threats like ransomware too, to help protect your identity and devices. Plus, if there's an identity theft problem, we'll work to fix it with our $1 Million Protection Package. Get new LifeLock with Norton, starting at $9.99 a month.
I was looking for somebody who wanted to find love.
At eHarmony, we ask you questions so that we can match you for a lasting connection.
I found my person.
I really found my true love on eHarmony.
eHarmony.com, the #1 trusted dating site. Start for free today.
As a physician, the bulk of what I do is deliver babies. The experience is minimized by the fact that I'm hiding my teeth. Instead of covering with my hand, I will put the mask on. My smile was no longer there.
When Richard came in for his consultation, he didn't want to smile. He was embarrassed.
At Clear Choice, we want patients to absolutely walk out of here saying, this was the best decision I've ever made.
He reassured me very professionally this can be done. Clear Choice is the future. Between the technology of being able to 3D map out my bone structures and then to custom make the implants and put it in knowing that it can stay there for the duration of my life. Why would I want to have dentures? When it was all done, I had my miracle.
And that's what he wanted to give back. He wanted to be able to smile.
I'm glad I get to smile again. It changed my life.
There's an app that lets you order from all your favorite local restaurants. So you can order this, or even this. Order from over 80,000 restaurants nationwide, right to your door. Grubhub, restaurants you love, delivered.
During the Subaru A Lot to Love event, come in today. Lisa Forrester 2.5i starting at $189 per month for 36 months. Latin Subaru in the Thousand Oaks Auto Mall, exceeding your expectations. Big enough to compete, small enough to care.
America's best sales event is on at Team Nissan. Save big on our award-winning lineup, like a brand new Nissan Altima.
Oh, espectacular.
Just $17,988, or save up to $12,000 off a Titan truck. Or get 0% financing up to 72 months. Rush to Team Nissan, your #1 volume dealer in the Tri-County. For America's best now, in the Oxnard Auto Center or on the web at teamnissandirect.com.
You know you love watching sports and your favorite show or movie in HD, especially when it's free. Spectrum TV gives you more free HD than any provider, including thousands of on-demand options. Enjoy Spectrum TV.
Who else is still out there actively attacking us? Are there other troll farms?
We know the problem. We have bad actors putting out bad information.
We impose sanctions on Russia. They seem to have done no good when it comes to this kind of activity.
The Russians in this case and others see us as a cheap date. We are an easy target.
Lawmakers in both parties on the Senate Intelligence Committee today reacting to the latest attempts to influence America's elections. The Senate Intelligence Committee holding that hearing on foreign influence in social media after 32 pages and account profiles were removed from Facebook and Instagram in response to an online disinformation campaign to spark political divisions in the U.S. Facebook executives tell federal investigators they are not sure who is behind the latest effort, but senators are certainly looking at the Kremlin.
I'm very pleased that Facebook took this action, and I hope that all social media platforms continue to actively counter Russia's foreign influence campaign. I have no question that it's going on, and I have no question that it is related to more than just election interference.
Joining me now is NBC senior business reporter Ben Popkin and MSNBC national security analyst Ned Price, a former senior director at President Obama's National Security Council. This is a very complicated subject, but it certainly would seem that to get to the bottom of it, you've got to have a government-wide approach led by the National Security Council, which we have not seen. They're in it belatedly for just under an hour on Friday, their first meeting on this whole subject. Ben Popkin, what did you discover in your research as you follow this hearing today on what Russia is likely doing?
Well, what we saw described in the hearing and what we've been seeing for over a year is their continued ability to sow disinformation and discord. One of the things that we dug into is we found posts that are from these fake accounts that Facebook deleted. They were identified as being linked to as foreign influence meddling. What this foreign power is doing is gathering people into different groups based on their identity, based on whether they're into black issues, based on whether they're into resistance and left-wing issues. And once they sort of draw people in with these sort of innocuous calls, then they start pounding in with much more divisive political messages, trying to push their buttons, trying to push them to act, and even in some cases encouraging them to attend rallies, and at those rallies to bring helmets, goggles, flags, telling them that they'll make the opposition pay. So this is a widespread campaign that is ongoing, that's spreading information, misinformation, not just online, but also seeping into the real world.
And Ned, we saw this during the 2016 campaign after the fact, and the Kremlin was certainly, well, the Russian operatives were indicted first for this false information campaign by Mueller, and now more recently for the hacking. So we now hear that Senator Shaheen, and Claire McCaskill were both hacked by that same fancy bear, the same operatives that had done the 2016 hacking. It seems as though this is an all-out approach.
Well, the Russians are at it again, and they are going back to the very same playbook. It's this same dual-pronged approach, not only using these internet trolls on Twitter and Facebook, as we've seen, but also pursuing what they consider to be valuable intelligence targets. In this case, 3 names we learned from Microsoft a couple weeks ago in Aspen have already been targeted, 2 of which have been identified, we believe.
Here, guys, they have to get in somehow.
He's right here. I see him with the pulse. I see him. He's right here. He's exactly right
I heard
here.
from those involved in the forensics of this that it was close cooperation between law enforcement, between the intelligence community, essentially between the government and the private sector.
Stay in cover.
That is what we need more of. That is how we're going to inoculate ourselves against this, how we're going to identify these efforts. But the problem, Andrea, is that this is not something the administration has prioritized. As you know, they held their first National Security Council meeting on election security last Friday. 18 months into the administration was the first time President Trump sat down with his team on this issue, and that's not going to protect us going forward.
And Ben, how difficult is it to penetrate these false trolls?
Well, it can be very difficult. The whole name of the game for trolls and Russian disinformation is plausible deniability. They want to make it so that you can't trace it back to them. So in this case, it looked like Facebook was able to connect the administrators of these fake Facebook groups with people whose accounts have already been identified as being connected to the IRA in previous attempts. So they had this little technical trick that they were able to do to identify it. But there's going to be other cases out there that we don't even know about, and that's the problem. Is that Facebook is this closed platform. In the UK Parliament, they released a very scathing report just last week about Facebook. And one of the things that they're calling for is an audit of Facebook, of its algorithm, of its systems. And they said in the report that we cannot allow Facebook to, quote, continue to mark up its own homework. So as long as we're relying on platforms to self-police, it seems that we're not going to be getting very good results. We may have only heard about these pages because there was a little bit of dirty laundry floated before this hearing to show, hey guys, we're making good, we're on the case. But without some kind of regulatory crackdown or a cohesive response from the people demanding some kind of action, it's we're really left to wait for Facebook to tell us what Facebook is doing wrong, and that's clearly not enough.
And Ned, you were in the NSC in the Obama White House. Did you see this happening in real time? Did you try to stop it?
Well, we saw a precursor to this, Andrea, and that was the spread of ISIL propaganda, terrorist propaganda, more broadly on these platforms. Not only Facebook, but Twitter, but YouTube, but Instagram, all the same platforms we're talking about today. And the key in that case is the same in this case. It is, as I was saying before, it's cooperation between the executive branch, between the government, the public sector, and these private sector entities. It's sharing those analytics, it's sharing the forensics so that these groups, so that these private sector companies can go in and with some degree of automaticity identify these, in this case, these Russian trolls, this Russian propaganda, and remove it. But look, we just haven't seen that to the extent we need to, and it's something that if we're going to be able to fight this, we need to see more of. We need to see more. We need to see more drive from the administration on this.
Ned Price, thank you so much. Ben Popkin, thanks very much for being on top of that today. And coming up, almost home, the remains of what could be Americans killed during the Korean War, on the way to Hawaii today to be met by the Vice President tonight.
So
You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
Your hair's so soft. Did you use head and shoulders 2-in-1?
I did, Mom. Wanna try it? It intensely moisturizes your hair and scalp and keeps you flake-free.
Manolo, look at my soft hair. I should be in the shot now, too. Try head and shoulders 2-in-1.
Hey
there, people eligible for Medicare. Give me 2 minutes, and I'll tell you some important things to know about Medicare. First, it doesn't pay for everything. Say this pizza is your Part B medical expenses. This much, about 80%, Medicare will pay for. What's left, this slice here, well, that's on you. And that's where an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan, insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company, comes in. This type of plan helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't. And these are the only plans to carry the AARP endorsement. That's because they meet their high standards.
I mean, interrogate this.
Want to learn more? It's easy. Call United Healthcare Insurance Company now and ask for this free decision guide. Inside, you'll find the range of AARP Medicare supplement plans and their rates. Apply anytime, too. Oh, speaking of time, about a little over halfway, and there's more
right ahead, he's coming.
How with this type of plan, you'll have the freedom to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. Great for staying with the one you know.
Good kill, good kill.
New, like a specialist. There are no networks and no referrals needed. None. And when you travel, your plan will go with you, anywhere in the country. So, if you're in another state visiting the grandkids, stay a while, enjoy, and know that you'll still be able to see any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. So call United Healthcare today. They are committed to being there for you. Tick, tick, tick. Time for a wrap-up. A Medicare supplement plan helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't. You know, the pizza slice. It allows you to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients, and these are the only plans of their kind endorsed by AARP. Phew! Call United Healthcare today and ask for this free decision guide.
My digestive system used to make me feel sluggish, but now I take Metamucil every day. It traps and removes the waste that weighs me down, so I feel lighter. Try Metamucil and begin to feel what lighter feels like.
Elite Singles, the leading dating site for highly educated singles. Register today to love again at EliteSingles.com.
When we sold our home, we only wanted our real estate agent to do two things: sell our home fast and for the most money. Thankfully, we found HomeLight.
HomeLight rates all the agents in your neighborhood using actual performance data like transaction history and reviews. That's data on millions of agents you can't find anywhere else.
It took just a few minutes, and it didn't cost us anything. We sold in just 2 days, and for more than we ever thought we would.
Join the thousands of people who have found a great real estate agent by going to HomeLight.com. So you have your headphones, chair, new laptop, 24/7 tech support.
Yep, thanks guys. I think he might need some support.
Yes.
Start them off right with the school supplies they need at low prices all summer long. Save $200 on this Dell laptop at Office Depot Office Max.
What might be the remains of 55 U.S. service members from the Korean War are on their journey home today. A solemn ceremony was held earlier today in South Korea. Among the remains are helmets, uniforms, a single military dog tag. Now, the very difficult process of identifying the remains begins. That could take years. This, as arms control experts confirmed to NBC that North Korea is continuing to produce ballistic missiles. Joining me now is Jeffrey Lewis, Director of the East Asia Non-Proliferation Program at Middlebury Institute of International Studies. His new novel is the 2020 Commission Report on the North Korean nuclear attacks
upstairs
against
are
the
right
United
above us.
States.
One I see
I certainly hope it's fiction. Jeffrey Lewis, congratulations on the book. Thanks for being with us today. Let's talk about the repatriation ceremony. Is of course long awaited, long hoped for. The last formal ceremony was back in 2007 when I was in Pyongyang on that mission. And we don't know, and we will not know until they do this very complicated forensic study as to how to pair these up with people who are missing and unaccounted for. There are 5,300 Americans missing from that war zone. And we're talking about 55, not the 200 that Kim Jong-un promised in Singapore at the summit.
Yes, well, you know, one wants to take this very seriously, and every single remain that we get back is worthwhile, and that's worth doing. But, you know, I think we have to put this in the broader context of negotiations. And I think what we've seen from the North Koreans are a series of goodwill gestures, which are welcome. But they fall far short of North Korea agreeing to give up their nuclear weapons. And I think we're pretty far away still from having a normal relationship with North Korea that isn't controlled by, you know, the constant changing of threats.
Well, let's play the president last night at the rally in Tampa, Florida, political rally. This is what he had to say about North Korea.
We're doing well in North Korea. We have our, as you know, we have our hostages back. There's been no nuclear testing. There's been no missiles or rockets flying beautifully over Japan.
Come on. Oh, he's right here,
I think our relationship is very good with Chairman Kim. And we'll all see how it all works out, but there's nothing like talking.
You can't open it up, guys. You can't open it up. Stop shooting it.
Doing somewhat of a victory lap, talking about the progress that was made in Singapore, yet there are no concrete results. And as you and I have been talking,
he's going upstairs.
Understand that there are satellite photos that have been verified that show what is likely more ballistic missile production. It could be long-range missiles that we know can reach the continental United States, including the East Coast.
Yes, you know, one of the interesting things is when the new year started, Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, said that North Korea would mass-produce ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. And everything we see when we look at satellite photographs is consistent with that. North Koreans continue to show up for work. There are vehicles taking things in and out of these facilities. Many of the facilities are actually being expanded. So, you know, at some level, I think we're all glad that the president is no longer threatening North Korea in the same way he was last year. I think we all found that.
Putin corrupt motherfuckers, shut your bitch ass up, dumbass bitches.
It's just that the president has simply decided to tell people he has solved the problem.
And what about inspectors? Because they were kicked out more than a decade ago.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, one of the interesting things is we're doing this work here at my institute in the same way that the U.S. intelligence community does its work, which is staring from afar. And there are real limitations on what you can know. So, although we found 2 centrifuge facilities that enrich uranium for nuclear weapons, we suspect that there are probably more. And so, while what North Korea has done, I think, it does fall into the category of a goodwill gesture. There have been no inspectors or other means to independently verify that there has been any change in North Korea's stated plan to expand the number of nuclear missiles that can hit the United States.
And very briefly, what is the risk if the president praises them for living up to promises when they aren't? So, you know, I am not one of these people who gets all tied up in knots over, you know, letting the North Koreans get away with murder, because the North Koreans are going to get away with murder. The scenario I worry about is what happens when we get past the midterms and it becomes clear that Kim Jong-un is not giving up his nuclear weapons. We've already seen the president turn on other world leaders, like the Prime Minister of Canada. Will he lash out and blame Kim Jong-un? I think that's the kind of scenario, which I outlined in the novel, to be frank, where the kind of hope of 2018 curdles into really bitter resentment, and then things could get very dangerous. Well, Jeffrey, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today. We'll be right back.
What we're witnessing every day is the story of our time. We're going to try to give you the best review of this day in the life of this presidency. As we come on the air tonight, we have breaking news.
Salon Pass. We're the world leader in medicinal pain patches. Our latest innovation, Salon Pass Lidocaine, using hydrogel-based technology with the maximum strength lidocaine you can buy without a prescription. Salon Pass Lidocaine. Nothing is proven stronger or more effective against pain.
Introducing the brand new South Beach Diet. I'm Jesse James Decker, and if y'all want to know how I stay in shape, I do it with the South Beach Diet.
Lose weight fast, burn fat, get leaner, and have more energy. Order your 28-day plan today with fully prepared meals delivered to your door. Breakfast, lunches, dinners, even snacks.
I lost 38 pounds.
It's healthy weight loss, easy to follow, and it works.
I lost 30 pounds on the South Beach diet.
South Beach is a low-carb, low-sugar, high-protein program that burns fat and transforms your metabolism. I lost 24 pounds. Order your 28-day plan right now and receive a week of our all-new South Beach Complete Shakes free. They're packed with 20 grams of protein, no added sugar, a great source of probiotics, vitamins, and they taste great. Call or go online in the next 2 minutes and we'll even throw in free FedEx shipping. Lose weight fast, burn fat, get leaner, and have more energy.
Trust me, the South Beach diet works. Call or click right now.
Call 877-807-PALM or go to southbeachdiet.com and get 1 week of shakes free.
I want to get a bar put in over there. Do you know any good contractors? Yeah, I might. Nice! Give me a bunch of quotes, check the reviews, and verify the credentials and qualifications.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything Home Advisor can, so just ask Home Advisor.
Hey, renovators. Time to dream bigger.
Wayfair, you're my new secret weapon. You got what I need for my renovation. I love all these options, so much to choose from. Bedrooms and basements, even my kitchen, your service is sweet. And my job is complete. Wayfair,
Start your renovation at wayfair.com.
Olay Regenerist wipes out the competition. Hydrating better than $100, $200, even $400 creams. With our B3 complex, beautiful skin doesn't have to cost a fortune. Olay.
Attention, do you have Medicare? Do you want to make sure you have the most benefits and lowest possible out-of-pocket costs? You may be able to lower your out-of-pocket costs and get dental, vision, and prescription drug coverage included in your plan. Call the Medicare Coverage Helpline now to find out what you deserve.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jason Buchwald. Over 3 million people have called the Medicare Coverage Helpline. But there are still many people who don't check to see if they're eligible for more benefits and lower out-of-pocket costs. It's so easy. One simple free call could save you money and get you more benefits. Be smart. Call the Medicare Coverage Helpline now.
Call now to see if you may be eligible to lower your copays and get extra benefits, including dental and prescription coverage. Don't delay. Call to see if you're able to save money and get more benefits now. Call 1-800-496-4900. Again, call 1-800-496-4900 now.
Crab Fest is back at Red Lobster with our largest variety of crab all year, like new Crab Fest Combo. Your one chance to have new jumbo snow crab with tender Dungeness crab. Or try Crab Lover's Dream. But hurry in, because Crab Fest will be gone in a snap.
The president's legal team is responding to his tweet against Attorney General Jeff Sessions in a new interview with the Washington Post, saying, quote, "The president has issued no order or direction to the Department of Justice on this," Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow said, adding that the president is allowed to express his opinion on Twitter. "I think it's very well established," said Sekulow, "that the president uses tweets to express his opinion," added Trump lawyer Rudolph Giuliani. He has very carefully used the word should. Well, let's get the inside scoop on all this from Philip Rucker, Washington Post White House bureau chief and MSNBC political analyst, and Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour and MSNBC contributor. First, Phil, your team has talked to the White House lawyers, and this is their explanation that this is when a threat is not a threat?
That's right, Andrea. There's a bit of a cleanup effort here underway by Trump's lawyers to explain this tweet where he called on Attorney General Jeff Sessions to end the Russia probe. Both Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani called my colleague Carol Leonnig a short time ago to explain that that should not be interpreted as an order from the president, rather sort of voicing publicly of his personal opinion. And they tried to make the case that this is something the president does regularly on Twitter, and that he was careful not to issue any sort of directive or order to the Attorney General.
But we should point out that tweets are part of the official records. They are part of the archives.
Yeah.
They're presidential documents. He expresses himself. He makes decisions on Twitter. He fired Rex Tillerson at 8:40 in the morning on a Monday morning on Twitter. So we have to take them seriously, or at least some of them seriously. Yamiche, is this an effort to try to get him down from this position or respond to bipartisan concerns that were expressed this morning, including Senator Blumenthal saying that this was evidence of obstruction?
this is all about obstruction of justice. The president's lawyers sense that the president, through his tweets, might have got himself in a little bit of a legal issue here, and that they're trying their hardest to make sure that it's clear that even though he said should, he's not saying must, which means he's not giving a direct order, which means he's not obstructing justice. Of course, we all have to remember that Robert Mueller is looking at obstruction of justice as part of the special investigation, this cloud that is hanging over this White House today, and really for the duration of this president's presidency. So people are very, very nervous. The lawyers are luring. I talked to one source who told me that President Trump likes people who can adjust very quickly. So you have the president's lawyers essentially looking at what he's saying, okay, if this is what we're going with this morning, we have to make sure that our ducks in a row and that he's not physically trying to stop Robert Mueller from doing his job, which would be a big deal if he did that.
Well, and in fact, as you allude to, Mueller is actually looking at presidential tweets, Phil, as part of the possibility of an obstruction investigation.
Yeah, that's right. And these tweets, as you pointed out, they are presidential statements. The White House said that and made that very clear early on in Donald Trump's presidency, that these are official statements of the government, of the White House. And they're also windows into the president's state of mind in real time. And that's why it's so important. The documentary evidence that the president provides on Twitter helps explain his thinking as he's making some of these decisions, like firing Comey, like today saying that the Attorney General should end the Russia investigation. And they all become part of the narrative that the special counsel's team can stitch together to portray or show obstruction of justice if that's what they conclude at the end.
Well, it certainly tees up the Sarah Sanders briefing minutes from now. It's the first one of this month, but the fact is that she only had 3 in July, and they were very brief. It was less than an hour, I believe, all told, from the White House podium, Yamiche, where you are pre-positioned to go in for that briefing. The fact is she doesn't often permit follow-up questions, so there's a level of frustration, I would suspect, among the White House press corps.
And today, the White House just announced that the briefing is going to be moved to 1:15, and there's a pool spray with the president at 1:45 where he's going to be meeting with a group of pastors. So already we are limited to 30 minutes, and that's if it starts on time, which usually it does not. But Sarah Sanders is definitely going to face questions when it comes to why the president is tweeting that Jeff Sessions should stop Robert Mueller from doing his work. And the other thing that's important is that President Trump is really giving us a window into how frustrated he is with Jeff Sessions. All of my sources tell me that he knows that it would be really hard to fire Jeff Sessions because he wouldn't be able to confirm another attorney general. So he's stuck with someone that he doesn't want to work with, and now you see his anger boiling over on Twitter, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of this.
And Phil Rucker, you're reporting as well in the last 24 hours about John Kelly, the chief of staff, who he's often expressed frustration with, but apparently getting a new lease on life, or on a very different kind of life than he might have thought or wanted for himself, because after this 1-year anniversary, he's telling the staff he's staying.
That's right. I think it's an effort to try to end what had been pretty rampant speculation throughout Washington and in the administration about Kelly's expected demise. He's been feuding at times with the president, although their relationship seems to clearly have stabilized for the moment. But Kelly told the senior staff on Monday that the president has asked him to stay on through the 2020 re-election campaign. I think it's important for us all to keep in mind that could all change. Personnel moves, there's constantly change in the White House, and so he may not actually stay till 2020, but he's at least staying on for now, and it's quieted the chatter in the White House about who could succeed him.
Well, Yamiche Alcindor will let you go inside, get your seat. Phil Rucker, thank you so very much. In a few minutes,
Andrea.
of course, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is scheduled to hold one of the infrequent White House press briefings, and as we just heard, it's going to actually be delayed. The start will be delayed, and it could well be cut off when that photo op takes place. So, less time for questions. We'll bring all of that to you live. Stay with us.
To stay successful in business, you've got to navigate a lot of moving parts. On your business, we've got your back with expert advice on topics from getting funding to creating eye-catching marketing. And each week we'll focus on ideas for growing your business, bringing all the moving parts together. Join me weekend mornings at 7:30 on MSNBC or connect with us anytime on all your devices.
Sponsored by the powerful backing of American Express. Don't do business without it.
The line between work and life hasn't just blurred. It's gone. That's why you need someone behind you. Not just a card, an entire support system. Whether visiting the airport lounge to catch up on what's really important, or even using those hard-earned points to squeeze in a little family time. No one has your back like American Express. So no matter where you're going, we're right there with you. The powerful backing of American Express. Don't do business without it. Don't live life without it.
If your moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's symptoms are holding you back, and your current treatment hasn't worked well enough, it may be time for a change. Ask your doctor about Entyvio, the only biologic developed and approved just for UC and Crohn's. Entyvio works at the site of inflammation in the GI tract and is clinically proven to help many patients achieve both symptom relief and remission. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection caused by a virus, may be possible. This condition has not been reported with Entyvio. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur with Entyvio. If your UC or Crohn's treatment isn't working for you, ask your gastroenterologist about Entyvio. Entyvio, relief and remission within reach.
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know how to cover almost anything, even vengeful vermin. Not so cute when they're angry. And we covered it. Talk to Farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are Farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
We've got exciting news at North Hollywood Toyota. We've teamed up with Kelley Blue Book, and we're now your trade-in headquarters. Get an instant cash or trade-in offer based on Kelley Blue Book values right inside our dealership. Best part is, it's free.
Like you said, it's free.
Get an instant Kelley Blue Book quote online today at NorthHollywoodToyota.com.
So trade in your car today and drive away in a brand new Toyota. North Hollywood Toyota. Let's go places.
93 longer days, 93 warmer nights. Summer is here. 134,000 minutes of windows down and music up. 8 million seconds to feel summer on.
Make the most of it in the new BMW. During the BMW Summer On sales event, receive a credit of up to $3,000 in select models.
And that does it for today. Thanks for being with us. And remember, follow the show online on Facebook and on Twitter at Mitchell Reports. Casey Hunt is here next, right here on MSNBC. Hey, Casey.
Andrea, it's great to see you. Congratulations in person on
Thank you.
40 amazing years. It's
Good
such
to
an
be
honor
with you.
to work with you. Thank you.
Onward.
Good afternoon to all of you from Washington, D.C. I'm Casey Hunt, in today for Craig Melvin. Stop this. The president tells his attorney general to end the Russia investigation in a string of tweets on the same day of his former campaign chairman's trial. He also attacked Hillary Clinton and said Manafort is being treated worse than notorious mobster Al Capone. The White House press briefing should start in about 15 minutes. We'll see how they respond to questions about this. Plus, Russian influence. A hearing on Capitol Hill reveals Russia's push to sway American voters went deeper than we thought. But with all this talk, when do we see action to stop it? And off message, the president says you need to buy an ID. You need an ID to buy groceries. The day after his administration floats the idea of a huge tax cut for the rich. Is he out of touch with his voters? We start with President Trump's twofold Twitter attack today. For the first time, demanding his attorney general end the special counsel investigation. He also defended the target of one of the biggest indictments resulting from that probe, former campaign chair Paul Manafort. Our first chance at some answers will come at what's become a rarity these days, the White House press briefing. In about 15 minutes, we're expecting White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders to take the podium and answer questions about why the president wants to end the probe that has secured 5 guilty pleas and, of course, dozens of indictments. Let's start with our NBC News reporters. Peter Alexander's at the White House and Ken Delanian following the Manafort trial in Alexandria,
Virginia. Peter, I want to start with you. Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee today, called the president's demand of Sessions an attempt to obstruct justice that was in plain sight. What is the White House? How are they pushing back? There's some new reporting from Giuliani and Sekulow, the president's attorneys, talking about the meaning of the word should.
Yeah, Casey, that's exactly right. The White House is pushing back by directing reporters like myself to the outside counsel representing the president. We, of course, will press the president himself. I'll be the pooler. That means I'll be the reporter who goes in the room with the president within the next 45 minutes. And Sarah Sanders, as you noted, will walk out here about 15 minutes from now. But here is what this all began with. Though it was, in effect, an extraordinary appeal to the nation's top law enforcement official, Jeff Sessions, earlier on Twitter. This is what President Trump tweeted. We'll put it up on the screen. He says, "This is a terrible situation, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country." Any further, Bob Mueller is totally... before he stains it any further, Bob Mueller is totally conflicted, and his 17 angry Democrats that are doing his dirty work are a disgrace to USA. So the Washington Post has now heard from both Jay Sekulow and Rudy Giuliani. They are the attorneys representing the president right now. And here was the pushback from them, effectively saying this is not an order, it is merely an opinion. Sekulow telling the Post the president has issued no order or direction to the Department of Justice on this. And we heard from Giuliani as well, saying, "I think it's very well established the president uses tweets to express his opinion. He very carefully used the word should," basically saying that Sessions should shut it down, but not that I'm demanding that he do so. Of course, we've reached out to the Justice Department as well. They are declining to comment. Casey?
Because we know that the president is always so very careful in exactly which words he chooses to use.
Exactly.
But Peter, this was not the only bombshell set of tweets. What did the president say today about Paul Manafort?
Yeah, the president has obviously been paying close attention to what's happening just across the river in Alexandria, Virginia, that trial of his former campaign chairman, a man he's tried to distance himself from in the past, saying he was only a bit player. Of course, Manafort served on his campaign for 5 months, 3 of them as the campaign chairman. And the president tweeted in part today, looking back on history, who was treated worse? Al Capone, legendary mob boss, killer, and public enemy #1, or Paul Manafort, political operative and Reagan Dole darling, now serving solitary confinement? Although convicted of nothing, he asks, where is the Russian collusion? And Casey, this morning I've spoken to several sources close to the president who say the bottom line for this president is that he's frustrated by this, as is evidenced by his public venting on it. But broadly, he thinks that he's being dinged, he's being connected to the Paul Manafort case, that he notes all of these charges relate to actions, suspected actions for now, taken by Manafort before he joined the Trump campaign. It is worth noting, though, that the president, then candidate Donald Trump, knew Paul Manafort, and he's known him for decades. Manafort even lived in Trump Tower for a period of time. Casey?
And of course, he did select him to go on to chair his campaign, and without apparently checking in to that background. Peter, thanks. Ken Delanian, tell us what's the latest where you are with the trial, and do these tweets matter in the context of...
No, Casey, the trial is a self-contained world where not only is Donald Trump not being mentioned, but the jury isn't even told that these prosecutors work for Robert Mueller. I do think we shouldn't miss the opportunity to remind viewers how extraordinary it is for the President of the United States to denounce his own Justice Department and FBI and a lawfully predicated criminal investigation overseen by his own appointee. This is norm-shattering behavior. We've kind of gotten used to it with this president, but I think we should still point it out. As to the trial, it is so far from this political world of Washington. Right now, Casey, we're deep into the world of men's fashion, believe it or not. The prosecution is putting on a lot of evidence.
Do you own an ostrich jacket, Ken?
I do not, nor do I own a $25,000 suit from the House of Bijan. But Paul Manafort does, and the prosecution introduced some pictures of his closets at the condo where the FBI executed the search warrant. And the next witness is a guy named Max Katzman, who is a business partner of another one of Manafort's high-end tailors. And the whole point here is to show the jury that Paul Manafort evaded taxes and spent money that was stocked in overseas bank accounts in Cyprus on these high-end items. And some other evidence included a Land Rover, a $750,000 renovation on an East Hampton property, $50,000 renovation on a couple of bathrooms. So we have an FBI agent, or had on the stand today, an FBI agent walking the jury through this evidence, and the judge is constantly admonishing the prosecution, look, Paul Manafort's not on trial because he had a lavish lifestyle. Show us the relevance, show us the relevance. And that is the challenge of the prosecution. Another thing, Casey, is that the prosecutor raised the possibility that Rick Gates, Paul Manafort's right-hand man, may not actually testify after all. And that may have to do with the fact that the defense unexpectedly sort of attacked Gates in their opening and suggested that their whole case, their whole defense is predicated on the idea that it was Gates who orchestrated these crimes, Gates who evaded the taxes because he was in charge of Manafort's business while Manafort was off in Ukraine. The prosecution's position is we may not even need Rick Gates to make this case. We have documents, we have other witnesses, so it remains to be seen. Gates may be too tainted for the prosecution to call after all, Casey.
An interesting twist. Ken Delanian and, of course, NBC's Peter Alexander, thank you both so much. Really appreciate it. Let's talk to our panel now. Jill Wine-Banks is a former assistant Watergate special prosecutor. Matthew Miller is a former chief spokesman for the Justice Department. And Aaron Blake is senior political reporter for the Washington Post. And Aaron, I want to start with you because it's some of your colleagues, great reporting with the president's legal team, as far as attempting to clarify exactly what the president was trying to do with this tweet. And unfortunately, it doesn't have quite the same ring as what is the meaning of is, but it's not that far off. They're trying to underscore that this was not a command from the president.
Right. They're focusing on that one word, should. They're saying the president was not issuing a demand here. Jay Sekulow, the president's lawyer, said directly this was not a command to the Department of Justice, and no such command has been made. Rudy Giuliani said that the president's tweet was very carefully worded, that he was making it so it wasn't, in fact, a command. We can quibble with that, of course, but I think the point here is that two of the president's lawyers saw this tweet and sought the opportunity to clarify it. They're making sure that the tweet is not read according to how some people are reading it, because they recognize how problematic that would be if it was in fact interpreted as a command. So we can add this now to a long list of tweets that the president has sent, which, by the way, the New York Times reported last week are being looked at by the Mueller team, that all suggest an effort to at least push the investigation in a certain direction, if not necessarily be obstruction of justice.
Matt Miller, what's your analysis?
I think Aaron's right. Look, as Ken said, it's a norm-shattering behavior by the president. It is a red line for the president to interfere with any criminal investigation at the department, let alone one into himself. At this point, he's not crossing the red line. He crossed it a long time ago, and he's basically built a house.
This is like another
he's living on the other side of the red line at this point. I think when you look at what the president said, it will be powerful evidence, along with everything else he has said publicly and everything else he has said privately, about his motivation in trying to shut down this probe. That he, all throughout this case, going back to the days just after he was inaugurated, has taken steps, sometimes publicly, sometimes arguing privately, that this probe ought to be ended. And one of the things I found really interesting in the spin from Rudy Giuliani and Jay Sekulow is their acknowledgement that the president taking direct action to interfere with the probe would be legally problematic. That's really interesting to me, because you know what the Times reported earlier? He has taken direct action to interfere with the probe. He ordered his White House counsel, Don McGahn, to have Bob Mueller fired. So if they're acknowledging that direct action, a direct order by the president, is legally problematic, well, I think they've made an admission that actually has serious problems with their client.
Jill Wine-Banks, can you weigh in on that? Do you agree with Matt Miller?
I agree with Matt. I agree with Aaron. And I think that we're in a situation where the president has a series of tweets, a series of speeches that are not only direct acts of obstruction and not only show his intent, but are even beyond that. Because if you offer a bribe and the other person turns it down, it doesn't mean that you're not guilty of attempted bribery. So if you say to somebody you should do something and they interpret it as, which almost anyone would from the president, if they interpret should as you must, then it's exactly obstruction. And he's done so many of these things that we have to suddenly say a jury will see what he means. This is obvious obstruction in plain sight.
Is that similar to, I feel like I've heard Jim Comey make that argument in the course of his book, when he said, well, look, the president told me to do it, therefore I took it as an order.
Exactly. And anybody who's listening to him is going to hear, in the confines of his office, a instruction from him, differently than they would if somebody else expresses their opinion. If the New York Times opinion writers write he should do something, it's only an opinion. When the president says you should do something, people and juries will understand exactly what it is and see it as an order. And I think I'd rather be on the prosecution on that particular piece of evidence in the same way that he said, would means would. Should means you must.
Should means should. But to that point, Aaron, I mean, she's right in the context of any one of us operating in a day-to-day life, with somebody who is, not just your boss, but kind of the commander-in-chief of the United States of America tells you to do something. How else are you supposed to take it?
I keep thinking about what if I got my boss at the Post, Marty Barron, came to me and said, hey, you should probably write about this thing. I would not take that as an option. I would say, I think maybe I should go write that thing. I definitely should if I want to watch out for my job. So, I think that the question, though, is whether that rises to the legal standard. Just because it's meant to be interpreted as a command, is it legally speaking a command? And I think that's the argument, of course, that the president's lawyers are going to make.
Right. And Matt Miller, what's the difference here between kind of the public and the private versions of this? I mean, one of the things that's interesting to me about the idea that Mueller is going through the tweets is that, oftentimes we don't necessarily ascribe public statements with as much drama or potential problems as things that we find out that we feel like we're not supposed to know, right? Like the president's keeping something secret. But in this case, it seems as though the public statements themselves may be just as problematic.
They are just as powerful evidence as anything he says in private. Now, you could see a situation where if the president is taking direct actions to conceal something, for example, when he asked all of his staff to leave the room so he could have a one-on-one conversation with Jim Comey to ask him to back off Mike Flynn, it's pretty good evidence that he was trying to conceal it because what he knew what he was doing was inappropriate. But that doesn't mean that just because he says it publicly, it's not evidence it's not evidence of his guilt. If he was to do a television interview and say, and directly admit what he did, like he did with Lester Holt when he got on and said, I fired Jim Comey because of the Russia investigation. That's powerful evidence against him. Just because he's stupid enough to do it publicly doesn't mean it's any less damaging.
Although there is the question, of course, Aaron, of the contradictions that the president tends to make in public statements.
Yeah, and that's, I think, maybe part of the strategy, to the extent that a strategy exists here. If you say one thing and then you say the other thing and they're totally contradictory, nobody knows what your actual state of mind is. Is he doing that because he's actually trying to play into his defense in the Russia investigation, or is he just really all over the place? I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that question, but you're right. We spend a large portion of our time in the media in Washington right now psychoanalyzing the president and trying to figure out what he actually means. Does he actually mean what he's saying? And that's a game that, to an extent, the Mueller investigation is going to have to play too.
Joe, you worked on the Watergate prosecution. Do you see any historical parallels here that you think we should be focusing on?
Every day there are parallels. I would say that Nixon actually accomplished much while he was in office in terms of Title IX and opening China, creating the EPA that Trump is now abolishing. But in terms of the evidence, we have comments by Nixon that were secret because they were not on Twitter. If there had been Twitter, he probably would have done the same thing. So now we have the obstruction on Twitter as opposed to in private conversations that luckily for us were recorded. Now we will have to rely on the evidence of his people who heard these comments, and sometimes, who, as has now been pointed out, what he said to Lester Holt in public. It can be in the modern era that Twitter and television interviews are the equivalent of secret comments in the White House. And I think a jury will be able to see that. So I feel confident that a jury of American citizens will be able to put aside whatever political bias they have and will listen to evidence, and that we're getting a pretty powerful case where the pieces of evidence are coming together now.
I'm going to count on our viewers to come up with a fake Dick Nixon Twitter account to redo the blow-by-blow. And quickly, Matt Miller, before we go, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that he's telling Jeff Sessions to end this. Jeff Sessions is recused from this investigation.
Yeah, of course. Much to the president's chagrin, much to his anger. We know that he's been angry about this. It's a thing he's never forgiven Jeff Sessions for. also shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Jeff Sessions had no choice to recuse. The president doesn't get this. A lot of people doesn't get it. It wasn't an optional act for him. It is literally written into the regulations. If you worked on a campaign, you have to recuse yourself from an investigation into that campaign. The president doesn't care about that. He's asking Jeff Sessions to violate the Department of Justice regulations, unrecuse himself, and then shut down a lawfully predicated investigation into the president himself. It's pretty powerful evidence of the president's corrupt intent, I think.
And it's only Wednesday. Matt Miller, Aaron Blake, Jill Wine-Banks, thank you guys so much for your time today. Really appreciate your insights. Meanwhile, the White House briefing could get started any minute. We are keeping an eye on that podium for you, so we'll bring that to you. Also coming up, protecting your vote. The hearing on Capitol Hill right now about how Russia is trying to influence your thinking and how you vote in the midterms. So what can or will Congress do about it? Plus, a man of the people, President Trump on the campaign trail tries to make the case for voter ID. But did it just make him seem out of touch?
You know, if you go out and you want to buy groceries, you need a picture on a card. You need ID.
Managing my type 2 diabetes wasn't my top priority until I held her. I found my Traceba reason. Now I'm doing more to lower my A1C. I take Traceba once a day. Traceba controls blood sugar for 24 hours for powerful A1C reduction.
We've been counting down to his retirement. It was our Traceba reason. He needs insulin to control his high blood sugar, and at his age, he's at greater risk for low blood sugar. Traceba releases slow and steady and works all day and night, like the body's insulin.
Traceba is a long-acting insulin used to control high blood sugar in adults with diabetes. Don't use Traceba to treat diabetic ketoacidosis, during episodes of low blood sugar, or if you are allergic to any of its ingredients. Don't share needles or insulin pens. Don't reuse needles. The most common side effect is low blood sugar, which may cause dizziness, sweating, confusion, and headache. Check your blood sugar. Low blood sugar can be serious and may be life-threatening. Injection site reactions may occur. Tell your prescriber about all medicines you take and all your medical conditions. Taking TZDs with insulins like Traceba may cause serious side effects like heart failure. Your insulin dose shouldn't be changed without asking your prescriber. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing, fast heartbeat, extreme drowsiness, swelling of your face, tongue, or throat, dizziness, or confusion. I found my Traceba reason. Find yours. Ask your healthcare provider about Traceba. Covered by most commercial health insurance and Medicare Part D plans.
We use Angie's List because we can always find great local pros.
For any type of home project.
Alright, something came up. I'm gonna hit it. Thanks for watching. I may be back later with this or something else.
You're so soft. You see my shoulders doing one?
I did. Wanna try it? Intensely moisturizes your hair and scalp and keeps you flake-free.
Manolo, look at my soft hair. I should be in the shot now, too.